also go by Sean.
And my name is Ranesh. I'm currently the Vice President of the Events Committee at BITS.
I think I forgot to mention, I'm the Treasurer and VP of Community Engagement, a position that we formed last semester. So really excited to be starting off this semester and this year off with everyone here. And I think we have a lot of people, so very excited.
Indeed. So just like briefly going to walk you guys through the agenda here. We're just going to talk.
VJ's in the club, by the way.
Whoever that was, please mute yourself until the Q&A, please. Really appreciate that. So again, the agenda, we're just going to walk you through a little bit more about the club itself, and then the BATE major, what to look out for, how we kind of, approached this when we were freshmen and sophomore in year positions. And then we're going to talk about some of the basics of Python, just get you familiar with like the interface, what to expect in some of the course load if you choose to take the BATE major, and then a fun little Kahoot to wrap everything up at the end.
All right, so first and foremost, when talking about the BATE major, so it's important to know what BATE stands for. And BATE essentially stands for Business Analytics and Information Technology, or Business Analytics and IT. It's very closely related to ITI, which is Information Technology and Informatics, as well as Computer Science. A lot of the overlap comes with the technology and software that you use in BATE, CS, ITI, and other such majors. That's basically, that's a very surface level view of what BATE is.
Right. I think that's kind of what was already addressed on this slide, Sean. I believe when we allocated it, I think you were gonna. Any other final comments to make here? Or?
Essentially, MIS and analytics are two aspects of BATE. There are many, but these are the two main aspects. One is information systems management or reporting, database management, stuff like that. MIS is actually a course that every business student is required to take. And as a result, working with databases is super important, not just for BATE majors, but for everybody, hence why it's a required course. Then analytics is kind of delving more into the data and coming up with meaningful conclusions about it. And you'll take a lot of classes that you'll need to do that for. BDAT, which is Business Data Analytics Under Uncertainty, that's a good one. Investment modeling with R is one that we wrote here, where you use and manipulate data such as stocks, stock returns, stuff like that, to make investment decisions. These are just examples of analytics. MIS, you have to use an ERP system, such as SAP, either for inventory management, logistics, stuff like that. And that kind of falls into the subcategory of MIS.
Great. Thanks, Sean. That was super informative. So kind of just a little bit more about our club. Sorry about that. So if you guys visited us earlier this afternoon, we also kind of mentioned how we're an RBS club that focuses on helping kids out who are actually taking the BATE major. We focus on basically providing exposure to all the different types of roles available and what to expect in the job market when it comes to business analytics and IT, in order to kind of help you guys get prepared for interviews and just understand how you can leverage your major in your job. We kind of have a whole lot of different workshops, such as technical skill building workshops, mentorship programs, career development programs, professional development events weekly, and tons of networking opportunities and expos for you guys to basically connect with professionals, understand what they're doing, and just basically come into these interviews ready, to story tell about what you've been able to do in college and how you can be of value for a company.
That's pretty much a great way to put it. And I think that's what we were talking about when we met people at the involvement fair as well. So yeah, workshops and all the other kind of stuff that we do. And as an example, some of the past events that we've done, kind of encapsulates all the types of things that you would see within a bait club and the bait major as a whole. We did an expo that was early last year. And we did resume reviews with KPMG, office hours with, for the career fair. We did a virtual career fair workshop as well as a follow-up. So it was mainly an extended career fair. We also did a BIT summit, which was in August of 2020. That was kind of an event for the summer. And we had a lot of corporate representatives talking about what kind of bait related jobs they have to offer to students that are seeking internships or full-time job opportunities graduating from college. That's not listed here, but that's also a very important event. And we're going to have a BID summit very soon, within the next month or so. So definitely be on the lookout for that. It's another great opportunity for networking. Explore Bait 2020, I think that's what it was called. We've done a bunch of workshops as evidenced by the next three pictures. We did a Tableau, Python, and Excel workshops. Excel was the one that we did over the summer. I think Josh was the one who did that. He graduated this past May. I did the Tableau workshop with Amir, who also graduated this past May. And then the Python workshop was by Thad. I think Shriven also did it. So all of these videos are on our YouTube page, by the way. I'll try to put the link in the in the chat box, or one of us will, where you'll get access to all of those workshops that we did. And we're going to have kind of an extended version of these workshops, hopefully within the next year, that I definitely want to do. The NBA case study we did with a data scientist from PlayStation. That one was coordinated by Ranesh. That was in October. And I think we did another one with Peyton as well, where he kind of used his SQL knowledge to sort NBA data using Visual Studio Code. Vanguard came over, did an info session with us. We've done a lot of collaborations using the Bloomberg terminal, for example, clubs within RBS. So yeah, and then the resume review we also discussed as well. KPMG, we know a good amount of reps from there, both who went to Rutgers as well as more of the senior ones who didn't. And they have a lot of opportunities that they tell us about every semester. So these are definitely events to look out for. And you know, we have a wide array of events, including ones that require breakout sessions, one-on-ones with recruiting managers, if they so happen to be virtual. So yeah, definitely be on the lookout for those.
Right, absolutely. And just to touch on that last slide that Sean was talking about, I think that's an area that BITS like really stands out in that the fact that we kind of try to bring all aspects to the table for you guys to bring out like the maximum amount of exposure. We have professionals in like the sporting analytics industry, healthcare, financial services, Big Four, pretty much like anything you can think of, and also any type of role imaginable. So it's definitely you know, like you don't have to, I feel like, especially for young people who join the major, they feel intimidated because they don't really have enough exposure. But like once you kind of know what your options are, that's when you can really play to your strengths. And that's what we try to help you guys do. Yeah, so we could, great. Yeah. So again, if you choose to embark on this bait journey, you'll realize that the core of your classes will basically teach you data analytics and data governance, as you can see in this picture here. So, I mean, these are buzzwords that get thrown around all over the place all the time, but they do have like different purposes. And I'd like to clarify that for you all. I mean, just know, so data analysis is basically like a process of cleaning data, examining that data, and transforming data, which is essentially like information, numbers, etc. You basically transform it and model it for the purpose of discovering information that you didn't previously know when you initially looked at it on surface level. So once you kind of figure out new information, that's when you come up with your business decisions or conclusions, and that's when that's when basically executive decisions get made. On the other hand, data governance is kind of more geared towards the orchestration of people, processes, and technology to enable a firm or an organization to leverage their data as an enterprise asset. So it basically serves as a critical function in business to support regulatory compliance, but it's also crucial to ensuring like a common understanding of organizational data assets across an enterprise. So data analysis is more of like the micro perspective once you actually have all of the information provided, but governance is like the process of how people within a firm can like safely perform data analysis. Um, and the thing is with visual analytics, like the bait major doesn't actually cover that so well, which is like one thing that we've noticed and we wish we could change if we were professors, but like not to worry because a lot of our bits tech workshops will actually help you guys learn the basics of visual analytics. Visual analytics are basically like, again, taking data and making it in the form of like graphs or like dashboards or things like that versus just looking at, you know, a boring report. So our workshops kind of help you cover those basics and give you exposure. And I guess, you know, to answer the big question here, like, is the bait major worth it? If you guys are kind of like at that crossroads, our answer is yes, because the scope and the application of this bait major is not limited to strictly finance or marketing or supply chain. Like, it's worth it because the skills you learn with the bait major are not already applicable in practically every business, both big and small, but the skills are also becoming extremely relevant like in recent years, especially now, because companies have so much data, so much technology. So they're looking for people to basically know how to interpret it and utilize it to drive smarter business decisions. So it's very new, it's the future. And I think if you're interested in finance, supply chain, accounting, marketing, management, the bait skills that you learn in this major will definitely set you apart in each of those fields respectively.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I think Ranesh summed it up really well. And a lot of the stuff that he mentioned, we also go over in the workshops, just as denoted here. Mainly data analysis and visual analytics, the visualization of data, as well as how to sort and clean and all those kinds of operations that you'll usually associate with, let's say, Python, SQL, or Excel. So that's the kind of stuff that we do workshops on, including Tableau and Power BI. Now we'll get into how this applies to you, underclassmen and upperclassmen, with regards to the classes that you will need to take. So right in the very beginning, and this applies to all business majors, you do need prereqs that apply to bait, but are necessary for everyone. So especially for the bait majors who are here, it's probably most, if not all of you, pay special attention to the courses above, the first ones that are listed, ops management, MIS, which is Management Information Systems. I think I mentioned that a couple of slides ago as well, and stat methods for business. So these courses, they generally have to do with linear optimization, which is what operations deals with, as well as optimization with multiple variables, which you'll have to use solver for within Excel. Excel is a very powerful tool for that. MIS as well, that's going to be more SQL heavy on Microsoft Access. You're also going to be making a lot of entity relationship or ER diagrams, where you have to kind of make a database environment that is the most efficient. Like, you have to store people's names, people's addresses, where they work, what their positions are, how to make that information as compact and as efficient as possible, so that if I search something up, I get all their information without the fluff. And it takes up the least amount of space on that database as possible. So you can make keys for that. You can make separate databases and refer to them. That's what we'd call a foreign key. You guys, a lot of you guys will learn about that later. Some of you guys probably already know what I'm talking about. So that's important for MIS stat methods. I don't have a whole lot of experience on, but I'm assuming it's a lot of confidence intervals, hypothesis testing, stuff like that. Ranesh, can you talk a little bit about stat methods if you've taken it?
Yeah, for sure, Sean. So I think Rutgers like does a really good job of like introducing the key statistical concepts for business students, even if they don't choose to pursue stat down the road. You learn like the basics of like hypothesis testing, confidence intervals, p-values, basically testing whether like your claims or your hypotheses are valid or not. And there's like multiple different ways to test it manually. And I think it's like pretty interesting if you really just like, I think the professors do a really good job of bringing up like real world use cases, like in their lectures and even in their homeworks that they give you. It kind of allows you to see like how a hypothesis test could be useful when, say, in like a pharmaceutical setting, testing out a bunch of different samples and figuring out like what's the best way to go. So it's all about problem solving. And I think they kind of like arrange the syllabus from that lens. And if you guys can look at it from the lens of, hey, like we're solving a problem here, what's the best way to approach it? I think you'll gain the best bang for your buck with these stat classes.
Yeah, and just to go off of that, like a very minor side note, a lot of the stuff that Ranesh mentioned, and even I mentioned with regards to stats, like p-values, hypothesis testing, critical values, kind of testing those hypotheses via the tools that you have. I had to use a lot of that in my internship last summer. And that can be a competitive advantage because not everybody uses that. Maybe they use pivot tables, which a lot of you might need to use as well. But that usage of statistics, just that knowledge of statistics that you get from stat methods and stats for business, which is another class. No, stat methods is one, and then stats for business. Those two, it's
Right.
very important, but definitely pay attention to those classes. We do recommend that since this is a coding heavy major, you take CS 111. Now, if you're not comfortable with the material at all, you don't think it's like right for you, Java and stuff like that, you can take Comp Apps for business. That's the recommended one for business students. I personally took Comp Apps mainly because I was scared out of taking CS 111 since the Professor Centeno, on my first day, she said, if you're in the business school, do not take this class. She said that, and as soon as she said that, I dropped it as a freshman. And I was pretty impressionable. So when she said that, I dropped it. But a lot of people did take it, and it makes sense to take, considering that we're BATE majors. So, yeah, definitely take CS 111 unless like you absolutely don't think you can handle it, because it does provide you with concepts that'll be used in programming, like loops, printing, referencing. I think pandas and stuff like that might not be there. That's Python specific, but loops is a big one, and just the data environment in general.
Right.
Building,
Oh,
yeah, go for
really
it.
briefly, if I could interrupt, Sean. Yeah, I think Sean brings up a really great point in the fact that once you kind of like understand the fundamental skills that need to be learned in one specific language, it's very easily transferable to other languages. The only difference being like syntax and some minor things here and there. So, I mean, regardless of where your start is, whether it be CS 111 or maybe you chickening out. No, I'm just kidding. Or you just taking maybe just like a course on the side, like during winter break. Like it doesn't really matter. I think the key is to just understand like what are the key skills that need to be covered. What are their use cases? Like again, it's just all about like reshifting your mindset into how can I solve problems down the road. So again, like knowing how to code isn't necessarily enough, but it's more so like how can you use what you know in order to solve a problem. And again, I think that's why CS 111 is a really good start, because they all their homeworks are very challenging and it just really forces you to think out of the box versus just thinking, oh, I know how to do a for loop. I'm gonna get a job one day. So yeah, great point made there.
And then really quickly, I think we talked about statistics a little bit. Stat methods is a class I mentioned. So yeah, a lot of B classes, especially the ones that are stat heavy, utilize the stuff that you'll learn in stats for business and especially stats methods, which most of you will probably take your junior years if, not if you've already not taken it. Definitely have a passion towards technology and analytics, even if it's not like hard coding. I'm not saying have a passion for Python necessarily, but just, results driven, you know, methodologies and using technology in order to solve questions. Essentially, solving problems is what the business world is all about. And technology can help you do that. And the BATE major is designed to give you the skills in order to leverage technology for problem solving in any situation, not even just in your job, but even in your personal life. Having that BATE major, it's a great asset for you to have if you can leverage it properly. And I think this goes well with with the next bullet point that's given. That's have a drive to solve problems.
Yep. Well said. I mean, just to kind of briefly sum up what Sean already covered in depth, the BATE major helps you learn like the following skills on the screen. I mean, just from my personal experience, I definitely learned an awful lot more about just like the basic syntax of Python, SQL, and R, as seen in the bottom three bullets. From there, if you want to take it a step further, like learning how to do different like visualizations, like using ggplot on R, specifically for statistical stuff, like it definitely helps you analyze data a lot better. And even with Python, there's like Seaborn, Matplotlib, a lot of different like very user-friendly packages to help you kind of like put the numbers to, I guess, bring the numbers to life. And again, like once you can kind of like see through like a visualization what you were analyzing, it helps you make decisions. So again, like decision analysis, data analysis, that kind of gets derived from you having a strong like fundamental in the language that you're messing with, and especially with SQL, right? SQL is super useful for just like not only collecting and storing data securely in a database, but also just like filtering through large databases. You know, like a lot of people have a fear of like not really knowing what specific information to pull out instantly. A lot of people just need, especially in the workforce, I can tell from experience, a lot of people just need to be able to pull specific records from a database like very, very quickly in order to help with another person on their team or something. And you can be like very, very valuable to your team if you just know how to do a simple, inner join or something that can just help you pull exactly what the person is looking for. So I would definitely like emphasize, especially for the people out there who don't know if data analytics or science is for them, I guess even having like the basic SQL knowledge down pat can help you so much in the workforce. So definitely valuable skills to be learned by taking this major.
Absolutely. All right, now going back to courses, let's say that now you've taken all of the prerequisites, like all of those 6 business core classes. Sorry, not business core, but the pre-business classes. Now we're getting into the business core. Well, now we're really getting into the BATE major because we went a little bit into the business core as well as pre-business. And the 4 courses that every BATE major needs to take, you need to take 7 in total, 3 electives, and these 4 classes. And this is where what we've been talking about comes into play. Business data management. So that class is going to be very, very SQL heavy because it's essentially an extension of MIS. It's basically MIS part 2. You're using your knowledge of ER diagrams in order to create the most efficient databases, just with more, more complex tools and more complex data sets. And you're going to need to use tools like MySQL Workbench, and I think that's the one I use. But all SQL experience on either T-SQL, Postgre, and all that kind of stuff, all of which we do have walkthroughs for on our YouTube channel. So definitely go check them out. Will be relevant and useful in BDM. Next one is BDAO, or Business Data Analytics Under Uncertainty. This one, you're going to need a little bit of Python, a little bit of Excel, depending on which professor you have. The one I had, we used Excel for an extension called YesI, which is just a simulation tool in order to come up with probabilities or average expected values of different scenarios. So it's basically scenario analysis because, just as the title suggests of the course, you need to be able to make decisions given variables, not knowing what the optimal outcome is going to be. You're going to start with decision trees. You're going to go into coding in order to operationalize a lot of the calculations you do with decision trees, which is going to, for many people, seem like basic statistics, and then kind of gets more complex as you keep going. It definitely varies from professor to professor. I know some do like binary, I don't know, stuff, but I think Hobbes did something like that. And that's a lot of what BDAO is about, using tools for business data decisions under uncertainty. Foundations of business programming, also just called Foundations for Ease. This is pretty much only Python. And this is an introductory Python course, essentially. So here you learn about, the different data types, the different operations. You learn about loops. You learn about functions, all of that kind of stuff, where it starts off small. It starts off with just a few bits and pieces of information, and then it introduces bigger ones where you need those smaller pieces of information, like the data types and operations, and you need to put them into bigger functions. And then time series, I would argue, is the hardest bait class amongst electives or the core classes, because here you have to use R, which is another programming language, and you have to use it quite extensively. Sometimes the notation can get a little bit hard. It can be a little bit, now I'm taking it right now, so I don't exactly know what I'm in for, but it has been very R heavy, and we're only in week 3. So that's a class that everyone's going to need to take that's in the bait major, and you're going to have to devote a lot of time to kind of doing the work required for it. So these are the 4 classes everyone needs to take. Usually the order people take it in is foundations first, then BDAO. Don't take them together. That can be very confusing for some people. Then BDM. I took BDAO and BDM together last semester, which was fine. And then time series they take at the very end, just like me.
Right. And just briefly to add on to what Sean said about time series, a lot of people that I've known have taken stat methods the semester prior to taking time series, partially because, again, you learn like a little bit about hypothesis testing, confidence intervals, p-values, and then you basically like simulate that using R, as Sean mentioned, and you also use like the ggplot library to basically like visualize your data points and try to fit. And that, I guess like that kind of introduces the concepts of like the concepts of simple and multiple linear regression. And again, just like to briefly touch on what regression is, it's basically just like figuring out how to best how to come up with like the line of best fit, like, and figuring out which variable specifically helps you determine the predictor. You know what I mean? Like which X variables helps you determine the Y. And that's like something to keep in mind when taking time series. Like if you have a strong understanding of like stat methods for business, honestly, even if you don't have a lot of R knowledge, the professors honestly like give you a lot of the code. All you have to do is just follow along. So it's like nothing to be psyched out by. So just keep that in mind as you once you get there.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, so so now we're kind of, so those are like basically the cores for the bait major. And now there are 2 specific groups that we're going to dive into for the bait electives.
All right, so I'll handle group 1, and then Arnesh can do group 2 in the next slide. So group 1 involves a lot of courses that are very IT heavy, as well as, you have the intro to ERP there, where you use enterprise systems in order to manage the day-to-day operations of a business. SAP is a very popular tool. You actually have to use SAP all throughout introduction to ERP. It's a very, very simple interface if you follow all the directions, but it's also very powerful if you know how to use it. What are some other data mining? You have to use Tableau for that a little bit, I know. And that's essentially data visualization for BI. Enterprise architecture very much involves the structure of a corporation as well as the support systems that go into it regarding finance, IT, data analytics, a lot of which is examined in enterprise architecture, as well as how the internal and external operations of a business can function smoothly and work within an interlocking system to best serve each other. Information system security, that one's an IT course. Large scale business data analysis, that one I've heard is a pretty difficult course. That's complex data analysis. I forgot which tool is used for that, but it can be pretty tough. Relational data, database and web applications. Relational databases essentially is, they're the types of databases that you'll see a lot of in BDM and MIS, and that's essentially databases with tables which you can connect to each other, which you can kind of join with each other. I think join is a term that Ranesh used in order to kind of make it function smoothly and pull exactly what the end user requires at any given point in time. Optimization modeling is one, risk modeling, pretty self-explanatory there. I've never taken them, but you have to use a plethora of tools in order to do what is specified there. Intro to ERP we just mentioned, and investment modeling with R. It's a class I'm taking this semester. I hear it's a fun class. It's a class that you also have to use the R programming language for, just like time series. And this is more focused on, investment modeling, using some concepts in finance, putting them into R code, and using it accordingly. The investment modeling with our professor is Professor Jelani, who's really great. He's really fun, and I would recommend all of you to take his class at any point in time.
Great, yeah, and as mentioned before, like there's some electives in both of these groups that some of us took, some of us didn't take. So I mean, feel free to connect with us offline and just pick our brains about what we've taken. And then for the ones that we also haven't taken, we'll, there's plenty of resources out there. Like in the business school, you can obviously email the professors, kind of just like I guess they'll help you figure out what the courses entail more if you're interested. But in terms of group 2, obviously I'm not gonna like necessarily go down the list, but rather I want to talk to you guys about like the regression methods class, like on the right side. That was like I think the only that was the only elective that I personally took out of group 2 in my tenure here at Rutgers. I think it was a fantastic progression from stat methods for business, because like I mentioned before, stat methods kind of ends off at the regression concept with like simple linear regression, which is y equals mx plus b, like the most basic X and Y graph possible. But then we kind of like, it starts off at simple, progresses into multiple linear regression, and then it takes it a step further by talking about like the decision making that goes into like considering a specific variable for the model. And again, like Sean mentioned, binary variables earlier on, like 0 and 1. So there's a numeric variables, there are binary variables which are more categorical versus like quantitative. So there's just a lot of different variables that you can assign to help predict the y variable, and it basically takes you through like all of the different processes that you can use, like stepwise regression or a variety of different things that you can use in Minitab, R, Excel. But yeah, I think I would definitely recommend that class for anybody who wants to either just explore the stat minor a little bit more, or even just figure out like what its use cases are in like a pharmaceutical setting or any industry for that matter that uses like sampling. Like there's a lot of classes. I mean, there's a lot of like in the exams and in the homeworks that I've done, like a lot of the textbook questions talked about like a pharma setting where you're sampling a bunch of different things. What is the best X variable for predicting the Y kind of? So it's like, if you're interested in that kind of domain, I would definitely look into regression methods a bit more. But yeah, like as you can see in group 2, there's a lot of electives that not only complement bait, but also like if you're more of a coder, you have your software engineering elective. Like it basically kind of just helps with, it's versatile, I guess. It's versatile with every single type of minor or concentration or double major that you're pursuing, which is why it's the bigger group, and that's why you're allowed to take 2 from group 2. But yeah, definitely a wide variety out there.
Going off of the 2 subcategories of the electives that you can take within BAIT is the concentrations that are BAIT related. So one of them is MIS, once again, Management Information Systems. While this is a course, this can also be a concentration, which is different from a minor because it typically requires less courses. You only need to take 3 in order to get the concentration. So for MIS, you need to take BDM and Foundations, which is great because if you're a BAIT major, all you need to do is just take 1 more course and you already have the concentration. Business Analytics, so you have to take BDAO and time series. Once again, courses that BAIT majors need to take anyway, and you can complement that with electives. Now, electives do not double count. So if you take, let's say you're concentrating on business analytics, and your elective that you want is investment modeling with R. So that can't double count for your major and your business analytics concentration. You have to take another class. So this only applies to either the major or the concentration. You have to take another one in order to fulfill the requirement for either or, but it can apply to either one. So you can either say, okay, I want this investment modeling class to count for the major, or I want it to count for the concentration, but it can't do both. But it is convenient because the required courses you will have already taken as a paid student. Yeah, so those are the two concentrations. Now let's talk about let's talk a little bit about the career paths.
Right. So as you can see, regardless of, again, as we said, beta is very, very versatile. So if you pair that with a finance track, then you can, possibly explore like wealth management, what it means to be a financial analyst, deal with strategy work. And if you maybe do more supply chain, then you could kind of deal with more of, logistics and things that of that nature that are related with analytics. I mean, personally, for me, if you kind of dive into more of a business analytics route, you can do more BA work that's not so data focused, but again, like it's more so like consulting based. A lot of information and a lot of decisions need to be made based on the data that's provided from the client. And I guess, Sean, if you want to even speak more on what you've done in the summer, that would be great.
Yeah, I think I previously mentioned that I was on the data analytics team for Bank of America Merrill Lynch. And so we were in wealth management. And a lot of what we had to do was use Excel tools. That could be from the data analysis tool pack, which has t-tests, z-tests, proportion tests, regression, ANOVA, all of that stuff that you learn in Stats for Business and Stat Methods. I used that, like the other people in my team had never really used statistics in order to solve problems, so I was the first one to do that within the interns. And I used that in order to gauge whether or not there were differences in data sets or whether or not certain programs that we had implemented as a company were working or not, how much were they working, what are some factors that influenced rising or falling client asset levels, or how can we best maintain our clients, stuff like that. I don't want to get too into detail, but that's the kind of stuff that we use data for. And the more you know about how to leverage data, the more like well-placed you are in order to kind of maintain that job, turn that internship into a full-time job opportunity, and just continue working on the things that you're interested in. Like I used statistics to leverage during my internship with a wealth management firm that was mainly Excel-based. And occasionally you'd have SQL and Tableau. Those are two other teams, but it's all within the data analytics team. So that's somewhat of what I worked on and how BATE helped me leverage my skills to best serve the company.
Great.
Okay, awesome. So now I want to briefly touch on a four-year plan that all of you should have. So a four-year plan is essentially planning out what classes you are going to be taking throughout the 4 years that you'll be in college. It's good to plan it out so that you have a roadmap and so that you won't be scurrying to take 6 courses for the last 3 semesters of college because you weren't planning for the first 1 or 2 years. So it's very important to have this, just to kind of have it out. This spreadsheet link, I'll open it up just to show you what it looks like. And there we go. So I just pasted the spreadsheet link to everyone. So it's not editable, but you should make a copy of it if you want to use it for yourselves and customize it based on how you want to do it. So what we have is we split up the courses that you will be taking all throughout college, and it's obviously split up by semester as well as year, so 8 semesters. And we split it up by subcategories. So you have your SAS core classes, you need those in order to graduate. Your RBS prereqs, and those are your 6 courses you need to take before you can take the business core. Prereqs is pre-business plus business course, so it's 20 courses in total. The BATE requirements, which are the 4 courses we went over, BDM, BDAL, Foundations, and Time Series, and then the BATE electives. And these last 2 are really only going to be here, maybe here. That's when you start taking your major courses. And then SAS and RBS prereq, that should be the majority of the beginning of it. Like, it should be here. Occasionally, you can spread it out and take some SAS towards the end of your junior and in your senior year, in order to just, not be bored with taking the same types of classes all throughout. So, you could just sprinkle in a history class with all of your BATE classes. So yeah, that's another thing you can do. And we also have on another sheet, the course list. This has both the groups of classes you can take, and I also kind of cut a snippet of a checklist that you can fill out as you take these courses. So let's say you finished first semester, you took macro, micro, calc, and stat for business. So you can just check these off after first semester, and you'll know that you don't have to worry about them anymore. And then sooner or later, all of these boxes will be checked, and you can get into your major classes, and soon, you'll have taken all the classes you need. And just as an example, I wanted to show you guys, the requirement tracker I made as a freshman that I've kind of developed over the years that has helped me. So this can be a template for you guys as well. And I've kind of given this to my mentees in the BITS and the BGS, Beta Gamma Sigma mentorship programs. So this is just, what I'm taking now. Final exams, I don't know about them yet, so it's empty in the next semester, which I also don't know about. The SAS core, so these are all the core courses you need to take with the codes. I think it may have changed now. Now it's like CCD and CCO, but back when I was a freshman, it was just everything was CC. Total achieved, total needed. So this spreadsheet, the one I'm sharing, there's no link to that because that's my personal one. But the 4-year template one, yeah. I linked that in the chat. I can link this one too if you guys want me to. And I can make it like, I can get rid of everything and then make it view only. Total needed, I finished everything as the all done at the bottom represents, and then all the classes I took as well. RBS core, this is important. All the check marks are done. And then majors and concentration. So I'm BATE in finance with the global business concentration. And yeah, some notes about good professors, as well as how many I've taken, how many I need. These checks are based off of the end of this semester. So I will have taken everything here by the end of the semester. So that's just something that I made for myself. Yeah. Vernesh, do you have anything to add?
Honestly, no. I think that sums it up perfectly. And I think with that, we could kind of just dive into, just keeping track of time here. We could probably just dive into the the second segment, which is the Python workshop. Yeah, we could get started with that. If you can, yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll go over what is Python. So we originally had a Kahoot plan, but I don't think we're going to have enough time. I think it'd be much better for all of us if we just did a short Q&A at the end. So we're going to scratch the Kahoot for now. It's only 10 questions, it doesn't matter. And then we'll jump right into Q&A after Python. So Python, first and foremost, is a programming language, which is an object-oriented programming language. And that essentially means that you can code different objects and different variables in order to serve a purpose later on. You can store values using objects and variables, and then automate processes by using what you've created, the objects you've created. And it does most of the work for you via loops, stuff like that. And so it's a very powerful data analysis and programming tool. Makes the programs you write easier to read. It's a very easy to read program, generally speaking, and it has a large library. Like there's a bunch of them. There's OS, there's Matplotlib, which is very popular. That's the data analysis tool. There's Pandas, which allows you to create data frames out of raw data sets from Excel or CSV files or whatnot. I use that a lot. I think you have to use that a good amount for BATE. in general. Familiarize yourselves with the types of libraries that come with the Python language. Has interactive mode. I think Foundations use that a little bit, not that much. Runs on both Windows and Mac, and it runs on different data environments, in integrated data environments, IDEs. So some IDEs include Visual Studio Code or VS Code. I'd recommend downloading that as soon as possible, kind of familiarizing yourselves with that because you will need that for Foundations. Jupyter Notebooks is also another good one. Usually they're interconnected. You can open a VS Code file in Jupyter Notebooks. And those tools allow you to view your Python files more readily. And it's also free to download. So it's, if you just look up Python download, it'll take you to this link anyway. That's the first one. And then just follow the directions from there, essentially.
Right, perfect. So this is what the Python code looks like on the VS Code software, as Sean just mentioned. So a couple of key points here when you look at this screenshot. Obviously, like any other Microsoft program, there's the tabs up top and the toolbar on the side, but pay attention to what's highlighted in yellow and the white rectangles. Obviously the white rectangle shows like the area where you actually write the code. And obviously like you name the file initially the same as, you know, any other Word document or Excel document. So again, very user-friendly VS Code is versus, you know, a Jupyter Notebook or there's tons of options out there, but like, especially for Foundations, a lot of us use VS Code. That's what the professor also recommends. So there's the area where you write your code in, and then obviously the rectangle in the yellow is your terminal, where it basically like compiles the code that you write after you run it and then prints the output. So right here, we just wrote a simple print hello world statement, and then you can see that the output was hello world. So if there's ever a problem and or an error or something, it'll usually show in the terminal. So then it'll say like line 1 error, whatever type of error it is, and then you can go back to the line specifically, and then you usually even in the actual lines that you're writing the code in, there'll be like a red squiggly line or something to indicate that there's a problem. So again, very, very easy to debug because it shows you where exactly you messed up. Those are just, this is basically like the interface, just to show you what it looks like.
So now we have some of the data types that I was talking about. Data types are the types of kind of values that you can assign to different variables or objects. So integer, sorry about that. So integers are, you know, basically integers, non-negative whole numbers. So you can add, multiply, subtract, divide, do remainders or exponents on them. Very, very similar to how normal integers are used. Floats, now these are numbers that you can have decimals to. You can essentially do the same types of operations on them. Remainders, not so much because they're in decimal form anyway, but everything else you can do. Strings, so these are a sequence of characters that are embedded within single quotes. It could also be double quotes as well. And they can be letters, numbers, or symbols, but you can't do normal operations on them. So you can't do like in quotes 4 times in quotes 4, because that would just, I don't know what that would yield, but it wouldn't yield 16. So it's essentially just string, like, you know, lines of code that doesn't have any numerical value attached to it. It's like sentences, you know. If you, it does concatenate. Oh, no, if you do 4 plus 4, but they're in quotes, it just gives you 44 because you're concatenating them. Just like we are plus bits equals we are bits, or I'm 18 plus, same thing as with single and double quotes. Boolean either yields true or false. So if you type in something like print 1 is greater than 2, then the answer that you get that it's going to print out in the terminal is false because 1 is not greater than 2, right? So the ones that the types of arguments that Python can understand can either be true or false. It's a binary decision. That is what a Boolean is. And you can also do bool and then within the parentheses type in different arguments in order to classify something as true or classify something as false. and it'll yield a result accordingly, which is very good for comparison analysis.
Great. Yeah. And then just adding on to that, just a few more basic functions and operators. Obviously, addition, subtraction, multiply works exactly the same. Division, there's two types. One is the normal division with just one slash. And then there's also the double slash, which is like floor division, which basically doesn't give you, I think it rounds up if I'm not mistaken correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously you could just test that out like 7/3. I think it will still give you 2 or something like that. Sorry, a little rusty myself. But then there's the exponentiation feature if you just use the double asterisk, the modulus function or the remainder function. If you were to do like 7 percent 7 mod 3, like it would give you the remainder there, which is 1. The not, which is basically the opposite of whatever you put in the parentheses, and your print statement, which will output the value or the string, whatever is in the parentheses. And then your basic operators, again, things we've seen since day one, like greater than or equal to, less than, etc. Equal to, keep in mind that's like double equal there, not just a normal equal. Not equal to, there's also a variety of different ways to express not equal to, but this is just one of them. And again, yeah, so keep in mind the difference between the double equal sign and the single equal sign. And random, if you ever want to do like a number generator or something, you can use random to import random values for a range. Like, so random parentheses 1, 10 will give you a bunch of random numbers between 1 and 10. Each time you run it in the terminal. So these are just some basics. You can always play around with it. And this is just the start. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And finally, these are how some of the operations we talked about look within the Python terminal. So with this type of input-output scheme, you could type stuff within the terminal and it'll output within the terminal. That's one version, or there's also a version of Python where you could just type it in the console and everything, all the outputs are going to print out of the terminal. In this case, if you print bits and bait, so the output doesn't show what was, the outputs won't show up, but it's going to print bits bait without a space in between. 5 times 3, so that's going to be, so it's like from left to right, and that's going to be 1505. So that's just 3. And then if you do the same thing, but you flip it, I believe it's, so the modulus would be a remainder, and this is just the whole number. So I think it's just 1. 1 times 5 is just 5. And 2 exponent 2 exponent 2. This one's tricky. This one's right to left, so it's 2 exponent 4, which is 16. Not A or B. That's just not A or B. So it's not A or not B. String 1 equals 1. That's just going to print out true because 1 does equal 1. And another important thing, equals is used to assign values to variables, like 1 equal sign. The double equal sign or equals is basically like numbers equaling each other, or like it's more of a matter of fact rather than assignment of variable. This is for new numbers specifically. Was I right?
Yeah. Hey, perfect score.
I didn't know the answers were on here. I was just doing it as I went along. Okay, we're not doing this, but we are going to go into Q&A for the last 5 minutes. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop anything in the chat. Someone did ask me a few minutes ago that, if you took something that was CS equivalent to foundations, can you just skip foundations? So the answer to that is no, from what I understand. And there are a bunch of CS kids that were in foundations with me that were way better, at coding than me because they've already taken CS. But unfortunately, you can't skip over foundations. You have to take it. It's a bait required class, and it's not something you can AP out of. Usually the ones you can AP out of are pre-business classes or SAS core. All the 14 business core and your major classes, you absolutely have to take. That's the requirement.
So question from Keyshawn here. Would you recommend pairing bait with the CS major/minor for careers in data analytics and data science? I guess I can just answer that first, and Sean, please provide your inputs as well. But I definitely do think that, yeah, having a comp sci combination there would definitely help your chances at landing some sort of like data science role. Because with computer science, I'm pretty sure some of their coursework kind of involves more object-oriented programming, like big O and concepts like that, which is pretty important from what I understand when dealing with machine learning and building those algorithms. I'm not the most technical guy out there, but like, I mean, I've had a bunch of friends who have taken bait with a comp sci minor, and they landed roles at like FanDuel doing like machine learning and stuff like that. So like, it's such an interesting domain. That combination is very attractive. In my opinion, you should definitely do that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not very tech oriented, but I just think that it's good to take all those majors because you can expand upon the skill set because different classes teach different languages, so it's just a lot easier on you as well.
Right. Also, another great point from Manati in the chat about like considering a math or stat minor and major, because even if you don't necessarily know that coding is what you want to do now, having like some solid calculus or stat in your belt will definitely help you down the road. If say, you work for a couple of years and you want to make a career switch and you have a huge passion in say for example, like basketball, and then you want to code a little bit. If you know the math behind the code, learning it becomes a whole lot more intuitive and easier down the road. So definitely consider that as well. What is next here? Yeah, so Sean said he would send out that his personal what was it, the template.
Yes, I'm working on that right now.
Great.
And like
We'll keep.
some of the stuff on here include like my majors and minors. Feel free to change that. Okay, so that's the my tracker. Let me know if it works. This is also view only, so make your own copy, please, and change everything accordingly. Yeah. So, what are some other questions that were up here? Is bait a pretty even split of statistics and coding? Does it mean more? I think it's more towards coding. There's some stat-based stuff, or maybe some coding classes that deal with stats, but I think it's more towards coding personally. It's a lot of problem solving. I feel not just in statistics, even though it's a really, really, really good foundation to have, especially with coding. I think it's just generally more coding. And same in terms of what Nadi wrote in the chat and Ranesh was talking about would apply to cybersecurity, because you can use your coding knowledge and just your technical knowledge and apply it to critical intelligence, cybersecurity, and other non-business majors as well. That's more marketing. I don't know, Michelle. I haven't taken either one. I don't know if anyone here has. If you have, feel free to talk about your experiences, but I'm not entirely sure what marketing majors should take, one or the other.
And again, like for those kinds of questions specifically, I see there were a bunch of questions about like which courses to take. So obviously, like reach out to your advisor for your given year. Like obviously, connecting with them offline would be a smart move because they have dealt with these questions before and they can provide you more guidance than us who aren't in that position right now. Also, to answer Michelle's, wait, there was another question earlier. Yeah, so like, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like if you're taking a bait major, you can't do a concentration in MIS or business analytics because that's exactly the same course load. Like, I think that's only if you're doing something else non-bait related, Michelle.
I think you're right. Yeah. I think I forgot to mention that, but yeah, see, that makes sense. Yeah, I think I said that it overlaps, but I don't think it's meant to overlap. So you can only take it if you're doing another major or something like that. So yeah, that was my apologies on that. Someone had a question. Does bait prepare you for current software engineering? I think it's more application based personally. I think like software engineering, that's more geared towards CS. Maybe if you're dealing with front end coding, that's more IT. Bait is, I think, more application based into business decisions. You do deal with obviously coding and stuff like that in Bait. I just don't think that software engineering, because SW is its own thing, I believe. I don't know if it's an SAS or if it's an SOE, but that will actually prepare you for what you need to do there. This is a nice compliment. You know, if you're doing SWE and you're minoring in BAIT or you're doing a concentration in business analytics, that will help you apply your SWE skills into a business climate. But BAIT itself, probably not.
I do want to jump in real quick. Am I echoing for anyone?
You're fun.
No. Okay. Yeah. Question for software engineering. I also agree with Sean. I don't think it prepares you directly for software engineering, but we have had BITS alumni in the past who did BAIT or BAIT CS combos and went to software engineering afterwards. So I just wanted to plug that in. But yeah, I don't think BAIT alone would prepare you for SWE.
Great. Thanks for that input, Anadi. And yeah, there's plenty of finance and BAIT double majors in BITS, and just that's a very common combination. I'm personally not in that. If Sean or anyone wants to speak on that, please feel free.
Would finance and BAIT complement each other? Yeah, I would say they complement each other really, really well. In fact, it's a really, really popular combination of majors to take at RBS. It's pretty difficult because the course load, like the course types, especially the core classes you need to take for finance and BAIT, they can be tough. You know, time series for BAIT, BDAO occasionally can get a little rough. For finance, investment analysis, it's fun. It's a fun class in my opinion, but it can get a little much. Derivatives is an extension of that. You know, there are hard courses in it, but I think the payoff is immense because, you know, fintech is a big booming industry, and fintech is where a lot of even the, you know, the institutional banks are headed towards. So it's where, you know, B of A, because I work there, we're headed more towards the fintech direction in a lot of our operations. We're digitizing a lot of operations within wealth management as well, because, you know, I directly worked on that. And both my finance and BAIT skills came together and complemented each other to give me the expertise needed to, you know, do well in that internship. So finance and BAIT, very popular in RBS. I would highly recommend it if you think you can handle the course load. And there's a lot of resources too. There's a lot of BAIT finance double majors here in RBS. Would be happy to help you throughout the course load, myself included. Okay. I'm just going to handle Roshan's question. So we don't have meetings, so there's no next meeting. We do have events. Be on the lookout on our Instagram, and if you're on the mailing list, then definitely that, as well as the GroupMe Discord. You know, we have a lot of different methods of communication. So we're an events-based club. So whenever our next event is whenever we are meeting. BAIT supply chain is also really good. I think there are a couple that I know that are BAIT supply chain. There's one class that's SAP based that double counts actually for the BAIT and supply chain majors. So that's a small kind of arbitrage opportunity to cut a course there. But yeah, and I think we're one of the best supply chain schools in the country, so probably in the world actually. So definitely a great major, like as a standalone, and paired with BAIT, it's also cutting edge, and it's two of the newest majors here at RBS. So I'd highly recommend that too if you're interested in supply chain.
We'll just take any last questions here before we wrap up. And of course, you know, if nothing comes to mind, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
My bad. Yeah, I think there was a question about internship application deadlines.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, if you take a look at LinkedIn Jobs and Handshake, well, those are just two of the many different platforms available. I'm pretty sure you're not too late for summer internship applications yet. I mean, it obviously depends on the domain that you're going for, because like personally, I know Big Four kind of closes its recruiting a little bit earlier than others, but like there are still companies that are recruiting well into the spring, from my experience. So I would just pay attention to the deadlines and just flag them and be organized. Again, like use Excel and just keep track of which ones you've applied for, figure out the deadlines, and just have like a plan of attack. So I think, again, feel free to connect with us offline. We'd be glad to assist you more. Before we wrap up, everyone, if you could show us your face, we could have a group picture here. And yeah.
I think also stop recording for now.
Yes, let me do that.